We'll go ahead and call the Senate Appropriations Committee to order. I think we've got the public defender up first in my stack of books. Mary, whenever you are ready.
Good morning, everybody. There should be a sheet at your, is this on? Okay. There should be a sheet at your place that is sort of a quick analysis of public defender requests this year. My understanding, Chair, is you only want NDIs?
Yeah, we're doing core changes and NDIs, and then Mary, I'll just remind you real quick. You got to kind of ease into that microphone a little bit because we do have tens of thousands of listeners online, and sometimes they have a hard time hearing.
I'm easing.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. We do not have any core changes. So our first NDI is on page 5. And this is the page 2. Page 2, the governor's pay plan. The next NDI is on page 12. This was a request that we had for mitigation specialists for the public defender system. This is actually social workers. Mitigation specialists is just a fancy name for social workers. It's how it's coded in our system. We had requested 45 FTE as well as the funding to put a social worker in each of our trial offices as well in our juvenile defense units and our parole revocation team. As the sheet sets out, what our social workers do is provide the services necessary so that hopefully our clients, once they are our clients, are not our clients again. The governor did not recommend this. We do, however, have significant funding in the Public Defender Reinvestment Fund, where if there could be authorization for FTE out of that and a switch from E&E to personal service. We could fund both the salary and the benefits through the Public Defender Reinvestment Fund.
For how long?
Well, assuming that people continue to use marijuana forever, the numbers are just going up in terms of the monies in that fund. We started with 1.2 million last year, and then we received a supplemental of 5 million. This year we had 9 million and are receiving a supplemental of 11 million. Next year it's 16 million, and we're not going to spend all of that 11 million in the supplemental. So I think we're pretty safe in terms of funding it out of the reinvestment fund.
Have you ever had these mitigation specialists before, or anybody doing some sort of
We
job
have,
like that?
Yes, we did it as a pilot project with AmeriCorps volunteers, which is a Missouri program, really good program. We had them in about 10 of our different offices. We did a study, and it showed that it resulted in better case outcomes and better outcomes for our clients. They were getting out of jail pre-trial and going back into the community with resources to support them in terms of substance use disorder, mental health treatment, housing, transportation. If you looked at the funding in terms of how many days were saved in jail and Department of Corrections, it came to a significant amount of money. I mean, you're not going to see that for a couple of years, but we're seeing the public defender caseload grow again after it went down during COVID, and we've identified this as a way to keep the public defender caseload at an even level. If you look at our cases, it is the same people coming back over and over and over again, and when we actually sit and work with them, we discover it's because no one has ever addressed the underlying issue as to why they have come into the criminal system. We have stories in our annual report about folks who have gotten, after 4 or 5 drug cases, have gotten back into their community, have gotten a job, have gotten their children out of foster care, and are now tax-paying citizens. When I sit at the dockets, especially in the southern half of Missouri, been down in the dockets down in Kennett and Dunklin County, it's an addiction docket. Literally every person who is walking through the door is there because they have a substance abuse issue. And it's also a mental health docket. We're seeing more and more that our clients are coming to us with serious mental health issues.
So the pilot program that you had and you utilized the AmeriCorps folks, can you give me any sort of statistical data on how many of these folks did not then show back up?
It's too soon. We started this in 2022, so they're not showing back up now. I don't think we've had anybody reoffending, but you really have to go out 5-10 years to see is it really true that they're getting out of the system. You know, people age often out of the criminal system, and so you have to support them during that time between 18 and 35 as they're sort of still growing up and provide them with the services. But every client that we have worked with has been successful.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on.
NDI, oh, I'm sorry. If we were to do it out of the Public Defender Reinvestment Fund, obviously we would need it switched from E&E to personal service. So I'm trying to think if there was anything else. Okay, our next NDI is on page 17. This is our public defender reinvestment. We asked for an increased spending authority of the $1.4 million that we did not spend out of the supplemental last year. The governor's recommendation was 7.7, which is new cash from that fund in addition to the 9 million that's in our core, but we think the 1.4 is not included in there. So if we could just recalculate those numbers so that we can actually spend the money. And then that, it's all listed, this is where it's listed as E&E. And while we can spend some of it as E&E, we were short $4 million last year in E&E, so we use this money to take care of that. We need some of this transferred to personal service. Anything else on that? Our next NDI is page 40. It's an increased spending authority request in our federal and other funds. Currently, we've been seeking federal grants. Obviously, right now, that's a little bit at a pause. We've had a limit of $1,250,000. Unfortunately, the grants that we were currently seeking, they've pulled them, but we're hoping that they will come back. We're asking for an increase on that to an additional $1,310,000. It would include an additional 1250 plus 1 FTE if a grant provides the money for an employee to monitor the grant. That's it. Is that a time record?
No, not even close. Any questions from the committee before we let the Public Defender's Office go? Nope. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
This will be a time record.
All right. Do you want it to be?
I mean, you've been over here, so you know how this works.
Senator, can I be really rude and tell you something I forgot?
Sure, what's up?
I wanted to introduce to you Matthew Crowell. I am retiring June 30th, and Matthew Crowell will be the next Public Defender Director.
All right, nice to meet you. Thank you. Director, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am Kurt Schaefer. I'm the new director of the Department of Natural Resources, thanks to being recently confirmed by the Senate. I want to thank everybody for that. Running through our budget and sticking with core changes and NDIs. First, I want to remind everybody there's 5 divisions at the Department of Natural Resources. One is the Division of Environmental Quality. It's the largest division. That's the one that does all the environmental regulation and permitting that you think of. Next is the Division of State Parks, which manages and runs all of Missouri's state parks, which Missouri has the best state park system in the country. Next is the Missouri Geological Survey, which maintains geology data, surface and groundwater data. The Division of Energy, which carries out low-income weatherization programs and maintains energy policy. And the Division of Administrative Support, which keeps the trains on the track, does a lot of the SRF and other financial activity that we do at the department, which predominantly goes to municipalities for infrastructure improvement. I do want to add there's 2 entities that are administratively attached to the Department of Natural Resources, so they're housed at the department. They show up in our budget, but we really don't have any control over them. One is EIERA, which is the Environmental Improvement and Energy Resources Authority, and the other is the Petroleum Storage Tank Insurance Fund. Really quickly, the overall in the department's budget is for the governor's recommendation for 26 is $1.1 billion with 1.714 FTE. I think it's important to point out the department only has 7% general revenue, 17% comes from federal, and 76% comes from other. Hitting the department's department operational budget, overall it's $5.8 million, it's 75.7 FTE. We have one core change, 65,001 FTE reallocation from DEQ in the Division of Energy. to basically better fit in with our organizational structure. And now we'll run into the departments. First, I want to introduce Kira Moore. She's the director of the Division of Environmental Quality and Petroleum-Related Activities Corps, and she will hit the core items in the NDIs.
All right. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, I'm Kira Moore, Director of the Division of Environmental Quality. I'll be presenting our division's FY26 budget, which is on page 10 through 183 of the Governor Recommended Budget Book. I'll step through the core changes and our division's 4 new decision items. First, on page 36 and 41 are changes to core for waste and wastewater projects on page 36 and a strategic mining project on 41. Both of these items address one-time appropriation from FY25 to be reappropriated to Appropriation Bill 17 in FY26. Our first new decision item is on page 46, is our Financial Assistance Center Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, or SRF, appropriation increase. The governor's recommended budget includes approximately $145 million. There is a corresponding supplemental new decision item for FY26 for $145 million. Both requests will address current record demand to provide low-interest loans and grants to Missouri communities to fund infrastructure projects. Our next new decision item is on page 74. It's our Water Protection Program Per and Polyfluoral Substance, or PFAS, rule. The governor's recommended budget includes approximately $169,000 to implement the new EPA regulation for PFAS substances and to accommodate the additional sample analysis workload anticipated from the rule. Our next new decision item is on page 87, which is our Air Pollution Control Program anhydrous ammonia. The governor's recommended budget includes approximately $232,000 and 3 FTE to implement this program. And then on page 115 and 121 is our Superfund Obligations Core General Revenue Transfer and our new decision item. The governor's recommended budget includes a core general revenue transfer of approximately $660,000 to the Hazardous Waste Fund and a new decision item on page 121 for approximately $1 million to address 2 things. First is the balance of the state's 10% cost share obligations for EPA remedial action expenditures at 8 Superfund sites. Second is the operation and maintenance costs associated with 12 cleanup sites. Details are included on page 116 and 123. On page 159 is our next new decision item, is our core, and our next core change. It's Environmental Service Program Operating Core. We're requesting to adjust this core by reallocating approximately $32,000 in general revenue and federal funds and 1 FTE from our division administration to better align with the department's organizational structure. And then on page 171 is our last core changes. We're requesting to adjust this core by reallocating approximately $32,000 in general revenue and federal, 1 FTE to our environmental services program to better align with the department's organizational structure, and reallocating approximately $59,000 in federal and other funds and 1 FTE to department operations to better align with the department's organizational structure. This concludes my division's testimony, and I'll turn it back to Director Schaefer.
Thanks, Kira. Next up is Carrie Bridges, the director for the Missouri Geological Survey.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. My name is Carrie Bridges, and I'm Director of the Missouri Geological Survey. Our division's budget begins on page 184 and has a few core changes and 2 new decision items. The Geological Survey Operations Core includes a core reduction of approximately $99,000 in one-time equipment and expense authority from the FY 2025 budget. Our first new decision item is critical minerals for the U.S., found on page 194. This item is for approximately $466,000 in general revenue. This new decision item supports ongoing and new collaborations with state, federal, university, and private partners to catalyze critical minerals interest in the Midwest and support a cradle-to-grave approach to understand and develop these minerals in Missouri. On page 199 is the Resource Development and Sustainability PSD Core. This includes a core reduction of $5 million one-time pass-through authority from the FY 2025 budget. On page 243 is the Flood Resiliency Transfer Core, which includes a reduction of $1.4 million in one-time general revenue pass-through authority from the FY 2025 budget. On page 249 is the Flood Resiliency PSD Core, which includes a request to reappropriate this core to Capital Improvements Reappropriation Bill 17 to allow the completion of the projects appropriated by the General Assembly. And our final new decision item is the Missouri River Flood Risk Studies on page 255 is for $1.9 million in general revenue. This new decision item continues to fund the cooperative work between Missouri and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to provide strategies and design solutions to create better systemic flood protection and resiliency for the Missouri River. This concludes my testimony, and I turn it back to Director Schaefer.
I want to ask a question. Where do you guys think that study is at in a timeline? It doesn't seem like what's been going on 4 years, 5 years. Is that correct, or am I starting too early? And
So they're
will it
doing-
be done by I'm dead?
So they are doing several spin-off studies at these different communities, at the repetitive loss communities. And so this one is starting in St. Joe and Atchison County. And so the other ones, the furthest along is Jefferson City right now. They're getting ready to decide on the tentatively selective plan that's been out for public comment. And so that's the closest to, that will then inform the system plan as the Corps moves forward.
Timeline.
So timeline, I would say it's still several years before the Corps gets something, in place. All right, that concludes my testimony.
Thank you, Carrie. Next up is Emily Wilbur, the Director of the Energy Division.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I am Emily Wilbur, the Director of the Division of Energy. The division has a few core changes and no NDIs to present today. On page 274 is the Energy Operations Core budget. This includes a voluntary core reduction of 54,000 in PS and a 6,000 PS reallocation to department operations to better align with the department's organizational structure. On page 282 is the Energy Efficient Services Core budget. It includes a voluntary core reduction of $10 million in federal and other funds to account for a grant that was completed in FY24. This concludes my testimony for the Division of Energy.
Thanks, Emily. Next up is Laura Hendrickson, our new Director of Missouri State Parks.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I am Laura Hendrickson, and I serve as the new State Park Director, I think day 12. Our operating budget request includes core items from Missouri State Parks, the Historic Preservation Office, and new decision items. Please turn to page 299 for the Missouri State Parks Operations Core. Here you will find a core reduction of $350,000 in one-time authority from the FY25 budget. Please turn to page 308. Missouri State Parks is required per Missouri State Statute 253.175 to maintain all fencing coinciding with the boundary between individual landowner property and the portion of the historic Missouri Rock Island Railroad corridor owned, leased, or operated by Missouri State Parks. In order to fulfill landowner requests for agricultural fencing, the governor has recommended a new decision item in the amount of $540,000 to meet this need. Please turn to page 313 for the governor recommended item of park ranger radio equipment replacement in the amount of approximately $746,000. This additional authority is funded through the State Parks Earnings Fund and will allow for the replacement of both mobile and portable radios for our Missouri State Park Rangers. Radios are the primary source of communication with Highway Patrol and local law enforcement, and replacing these existing outdated radios will increase officer safety and allow park rangers to have better communication when patrolling state parks and historic sites. Please turn to page 316 for Missouri State Parks pass-through appropriation. The FY26 governor's recommendation includes a core reduction in the amount of $150,000 from general revenue for the Bruce R. Watkins Strategic Plan and Programming. On page 325, you will find a core reduction of $625,000 in a one-time park sales tax fund pass-through authority from the FY25 budget.
Senator Nurnberg, you have a question?
Yep.
Go ahead.
I want to back up there, just talking about the core real quick. In terms of park rangers, I was glad to see something to support our rangers and the radio equipment. I know they have faced some challenges and some shortages. Where are you all right now? And I know you're new to the job, but where are we right now in staffing park rangers?
So we have 47 full-time rangers. Right now, we have 6 going through the academy.
Okay.
So you're right, it is difficult to keep them, but they're doing a good job right now. And like I said, we have 6 new ones coming on, so.
Okay, and then in terms of pay plan, I know obviously these folks are in remote areas, law enforcement, but don't always have all the other support that law enforcement gets. So in terms of retaining these folks, what have we done in terms of pay? Is there anything that we've done other than the basic increase?
We have, and Kendi might be able to help me here, but we have proposed previously pay plan adjustments for them, but they did not rise to the top, if you will.
Okay, and then can you all share those with me offline?
Yeah,
Just
absolutely. We'd be happy
continue
to.
get into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, appreciate
Thank
it.
you. On page 325, you will find a core reduction of $625,000 in the one-time state park sales tax pass-through from the FY25 budget. The governor recommended the reappropriation of the $625,000 in capital improvements reappropriation Bill 17. This concludes the presentation of Missouri State Parks budget. Thanks.
Thank you, Laura. Next up is Darcy Bybee, the Director of Division of Administrative Services for the agency-wide items.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Darcy Bybee, and I serve as the Director for the Division of Administrative Support. The agency-wide section spans the entire department and is not specific to a particular division. We have no core changes and 4 governor-recommended new decision items in this section. The first is on page 350 for the governor-recommended pay plan, which totals approximately $4.8 million. The second is on page 359 and is for a general revenue pay plan pickup in the amount of approximately $174,000. The third is on page 363 for a Missouri River Coordinator position. This NDI contains general revenue for $130,000 for personal service and approximately $21,000 for E&E. And the last is on page 366 for a salary increase for the department director in the amount of approximately $26,000 from a combination of general revenue, federal, and other funds. As there's no changes to the other agency-wide items, this concludes the agency-wide section of our budget, and I'll turn it back over to Director Schaefer. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no further questions, that's our budget.
Any other questions from the committee before we cut DNR loose? Nope.
I will.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Mayor.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Hang on one second. Because I don't think, oh, yeah. ERA does not have any changes, but I think PISTIF does have a change.
Okay.
Sorry about that. And this is Kelly Ogletree, who is the Executive Director of PISTIF.
Hello, everyone. We just have one quick NDI. It is on page, I apologize, 437. What this is, it's a whopping $10,000 more that we need for, we've got a $70,000 appropriation for refunds, which generally happen, the most common refund is when someone has applied for coverage but didn't get all their paperwork in or were not in compliance with the state regs, so they are not allowed in the fund. Or if somebody sells their site or closes it down before the participation period ends, we refund the remaining, we prorate what's left and we'll refund that. And it's at it's been at $70,000 for as long as I can remember and beyond. And so we're just asking for $10,000 more so that we don't run out before the end of the fiscal year every year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Next up, we've got the Department of Conservation.
Morning, Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jason Sumners. I serve as the Director of the Missouri Department of Conservation. As we've discussed with Chairman Huff, we'll provide an overview of new spending approved by the Conservation Commission, I'd like to mention that the information in the executive book is included in the department's expenditure plan, which is available on the department's website. The commission reviews the expenditure plan in April during a budget workshop that's open to the public prior to its approval at the May commission meeting. In addition, the commission reviews revenues and expenditures monthly, ensuring a fiscally conservative approach. The Department of Conservation centers around 3 strategic goals in our department's strategic initiatives. These goals are also how we budget. So these include Goal 1, MDC takes care of nature. Goal 2, MDC connects people with nature. And Goal 3, MDC maintains the public trust. The governor's recommendation for fiscal year 2026 is $240.9 million, which includes $26.1 million in increases. Mr. Chairman, if there are any questions related to the commission-approved projects, I'd be happy to answer them now or go through each of them with the committee.
Any questions for conservation on those projects? Doesn't look like it.
That concludes my presentation.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
All right, that will conclude the Senate Appropriations hearing this morning. Same time and place tomorrow. I think we've got the Office of Administration, so that ought to be fun. Thanks.